Hello there one and all, and welcome to the Cadvent Calendar, my 2016 Christmas special series where I count down my top 25 favourite video games of all time. Before I properly begin though with number 25, I wanted to make a few things clear which I won't repeat in the following videos. Firstly, that I must ask all of you to be a little open-minded about my choices, not just because they are indeed my choices and not yours, but also because if you try to figure out what my favourite games of all time are from what other top 10 videos I've done tell you, that won't help. This list took a long time to compile, and every week a couple of the games I talk about on here will probably have swapped around, and my mind has changed a little bit even from my last top 10 about horror games, but most of the games in this list I indeed never move at all until something betters it in the coming years. Secondly, since this was such a difficult list and I'm only going at one game per franchise, a lot of the games I couldn't fit in here or nearly made it until they got shafted, so here are some honourable mentions said in a ridiculously quick voice. Runner 2, Binding of Isaac Rebirth, PT, Guacamelee, Super Metroid, Hotline Miami, Braid, Red Dead Redemption, Symphony of the Night, Shadow of the Colossus, A Link Between Worlds, Eternal Darkness, Ape Escape 3, Wipeout, HD Fury, Tomb Raider Reboot, Rock Band 2, Skate 2, and Mortal Kombat 9. And with that, are we ready? Good, let's begin. Welcome everybody to the Cadvent Calendar. Tekken 5 is not only my favourite Tekken installment, but also the greatest fighter I think I've ever played, and with stuff like Soul Calibur 2 or even other Tekken games like Tekken Tag 2 to fight against it, you get it because you have to fight in the game. This was not an easy thing for me to say, but after replaying it and getting the footage that you see here, even without any of the unlockable characters since I lost my data from this game many years ago, yep, no contest, I just fucking adore this game. Tekken always had humble beginnings, especially with the advent of brand spanking new 3D fighting, and what initially began as a gimmick where every character looked like an inflatable sex toy, every following main series game began to not only control more gracefully, get faster paced and give you oodles more combos to learn, but also began including new bonus content and actually using the 3D as a proper gameplay mechanic. And after the slight dip in quality from Tekken 3 to Tekken 4, one of the most confused and honestly forgettable games I think I've ever played, Tekken 5 signified a rise back to the top. When I was younger, this was the fighting game, nothing compared. The amount of depth, customization, visual variety, features, gameplay time, things to unlock, Tekken 5 has it all, and it even looks and plays smoother than a couple of PS3 and Xbox 360 games I've played. As a 3D fighting game, in my opinion, it does practically everything right. Every character has a huge and diverse move list that all flow within each other to make stringing combos and air juggling a marvelous thing to master. The 3D lends itself to not only sidestepping to avoid attacks, but also sidestep counter-attacking and sidestep combos that you could even corner people into the walls with. But with how different to play and vastly performing every character is, it turns every fight into a ballet of skill. And with how fast the moves can be performed and how fast you move around in the game itself, every battle morphs into a twisted dance of impeccable timing, looking for openings, knowing when to guard, when to use particular moves and grabs, and it's seriously rewarding and almost compulsory that you get good at the game in order to get the most out of it and not get your ass kicked, because these computer players are brutal with you, but not cheap in the slightest. They're all predictable and all fair with you, constantly teaching you and giving you chances as long as you're paying attention and not mashing buttons. Otherwise, they will exploit that and punish you, especially when playing as every character and beating their stages to unlock everything. And timing and last minute decisions to defend and offend are at the forefront of the deep combat system and character type dynamics, since the button commands are the opposite of how they are in earlier games, instead being instantly fast and instantly gratifying. This is all wrapped around classic Tekken multiplayer staples like Team Battle, some of the most entertaining and self-aware nonsense story modes for a fighter I've ever seen in my life, an epic soundtrack, the ability to play through near complete versions of Tekken 1, 2 and 3 on the same disc, an entire game within a game called Devil Within, which is flawed, I will admit, but still extremely challenging, fun, and enough of a gameplay shift that it's definitely worth trying at least once. And man, it's a bonus game within the main game, you can't complain. I've also really appreciated the ingenious button pull in combat and how you can use that logic and knowledge to figure out particular characters that you know nothing about just from experimenting with them. And that final boss encounter is just... Well, look at this fucking thing. Think Heihachi was old and frumpy? Well, that's his dad. And he has a mouth for a stomach. You can't make this shit up. And then they went and ruined it with Tekken 6. Seriously, I want to beat people up, not wait 10 seconds for every character I scroll through on a fucking menu. Something I never thought I'd enjoy in the gaming world was walking simulators. And I know that people hate using such a derogative and basic term to describe games like that, but I think that that label has been very well earned by a couple of games out there that give you absolutely sodding nothing except fucking walking. No interaction, no interesting unfolding story based on your connection with the world, no point of what you're doing. You're basically just watching a shitty first-person movie in which you need to hold your finger down on a W key or thumbstick to move forward. What I'm trying to say is that it can be done very wrong, like with, in my opinion, Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, but it can also be done very right, and one of those games that did it in my absolute favorite way is The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. How do you describe this game? Well, it's an exploration, walking, artsy, puzzle, ghost story, mystery, detective, atmospheric, culty game. I don't know. All things considered, I guess that makes it an explore, walk, artist, ghost story, detect, atmospheric, culty game. Look, I don't know. I don't make up the rules. The game's a fucking idiot. Okay, yeah, it encompasses a lot of things, and the amazing thing is how correctly it combines all of this stuff into a game with an extremely limited control scheme, along with the odd moment where you shit your pants from the shock and surprise of sudden plot elements and gameplay mechanics. In Ethan Carter, you play as paranormal investigator and world-class detective known as Paul Prospero, who receives a letter from his biggest fan, Ethan Carter, begging him to come and find him after he goes missing. Once that intro is out of the way, you're free to roam around some of the most authentic and luscious visuals I've ever seen in a game, truly soak in every inch of the dramatically shifting and beautiful atmosphere, and do what detectives do best, find clues and solve crimes. And for the main drive of the gameplay, that's pretty cool as it is, since every crime you need to reconstruct always throws more devilish and creepy ideas at you to keep them interesting, and the rest of the puzzle solving, world building and story progression is explored and directly interacted upon with many puzzles in store for you. And they range from everything to finally scouring the landscape looking for specific items to take you to space, to finding an abandoned house in which you have to work out through visual hints where each room of the house belongs as you cycle through the rooms to place them in each door frame until you find the correct one and piece it all together. I know that doesn't really make much sense, but it makes sense when you actually play it. Most of what you find is abandoned, and the sound design, soundtrack and visuals all work in tangent to create an air of crippling loneliness and oftentimes terrifying suspenseful ambience I have yet to find in another game like this. And as the plot thickens, more murders and treacheries get uncovered and more puzzles are solved, you get ever so close to figuring out what happened in this disturbing and intriguing abandoned world that was left behind, for you to only then get a monster of a plot twist and such a depressing ending that you don't care what the point of everything was building up to. And it's not just a shocking ending for the sake of it. It exists and makes sense within the world that you play through, and it makes you question and reflect on everything you just did. It's hard to describe it in depth without ruining it. Without spoiling any more though, I'll just say that The Vanishing of Ethan Carter is the best walking simulator I personally have ever played, and one that if you aren't fond of the genre but want to see the potential of it, I'd say go and play. I love Sly Cooper and his quick, stealthy action platforming, make no mistake, but I found it so difficult to pick my favorite game. One, I love for its elegant simplicity and completely compact and incredible art direction and level design, playing more like an evolved PS2 Crash Bandicoot with tons more mechanics. Two, I love for the epic gameplay shift, huge open worlds and tighter controls. And three, I love for combining everything I love about 1 and 2 together while throwing in some memorable characters up the arse. And if you ever had memorable characters shoved up your arse, well I have, and I can confirm that it's the best feeling ever! But unfortunately I must apologise to Sucker Punch, and apologise to any die-hard raging Sly fans, because my favourite Sly game is Thieves in Time. Not only for being an incredible game in its own right before Sanzaru Games had to put their name towards the Sonic Boom franchise, but also because of it fully understanding and implementing what Sucker Punch did with the other 3 games, and not necessarily expanding things to a crazy degree, but more refining it. Visually, it's the most beautiful. The bosses, in my humble opinion, are probably the best in the series. The hub worlds are some of the most interesting and uniquely gorgeous to sneak, zip, and bounce your way around, and the story and cutscenes I found packed more emotion and humor into it than any of the other games before it. It felt like the perfect mix of everything Sly wanted to do, and I find it the most entertaining to play through because of that. Full of heart and lots of deep moments for the memorable characters that you've grown up with since the first game, and which of course is helped along by the perfect controls and many different ways to play with different characters and varied missions based on those characters. Since you're traveling through time, everything you see isn't stuck within its own world, and everything, not just visuals, are constantly changing around you, and finding all of Sly's ancestors while playing as them with their own unique set of abilities is the icing on the cake. So damn cool. Nothing in the missions at all, or even in the cutscenes like in the previous games, incredibly boring mission briefings feels like a chore in this game because of its faster paced and more condensed style, which is noticeable even in the side missions in the hub worlds, like finding the returning clue bottles or stealing special things and then running back to the safe house in a time limit for more unlockables. Just for those examples, they're both weaved into the exploration mechanic and teach you how to exploit and fully take advantage of your moveset and how to use it around the level design to help you with the main missions, and just give you an extremely fun extra thing to do in order to get more upgrades, which get more outlandish and insanely useful and fun the more you play through it. I know many of these things I'm talking about have been done in other Sly games, but like I said, this game is the perfect pick and mix, stripping away the bullshit and bringing back everything we originally loved, putting them all together and focusing much more on compact visual details, missions, character movesets and level designs to make it feel like a totally full and brimming, shaken up bottle of cloudy lemonade ready to erupt and shower you all in gold, and I don't mean piss. I personally also found the minigames and hacking games insanely enjoyable and a great way to break everything up, and the only major thing I can complain seriously about are the load times. Not that they're awful, but because of how fast-paced the game plays, it serves as a stark contrast. But with everything else amazing this game does, it's not that much of an issue though. I still love it, and that's why it's on the Cadvent Calendar. I have always loved Max Payne 2's story and improvements to the gameplay and narrative from the original, but then we have Max Payne 3, which despite having a much more straightforward Hollywood blockbuster story than both previous games combined, also managed to pack in some of the tightest writing and depressing sympathetic character study towards the beloved Max in the whole series. And the obviously improved graphics leap and control from one generation to the next did it as many favors as the lovely writing weaved within to the bland and basic main plot. In the Max Payne series, you run around and kill people with as much grace, slow-mo and insane guns as you can, and with every game the control got better, the game feel from jumping around and slow-mo bullet time and gunfire got better, the visuals got better, and for the story to take a tiny step down in Max Payne 3 honestly isn't a big deal whatsoever with how much more polished the gameplay became from 2 to 3. I just don't understand why so many people hate this game, to be honest. Yeah, it ain't film noir like 1 or 2, but it's one of the most badass games I've ever played, and I never found the cutscene effects annoying. I felt like I was in Max's head. In terms of linear third-person action games, this is in my opinion one of the finest ever made, just from how well every simple element works together. There are so many ways to progress, so many ways to kill people, so many uses for bullet time even as you act with the environment, like sliding on tables and jumping across ledges, after which you lie on the floor strategically figuring out when you should move again. And so many satisfying guns to use in all of this, not to mention so many guns that you have to pick and choose between on the fly depending on what's on the battlefield, instead of having a weapon wheel. I mean, it's nice to have a weapon wheel sometimes, but Max Payne never really got the balance of it right. Some of these guns are fucking useless compared to how much ammo you get with the more insanely overpowered other guns. Despite any major need to explore and lack of additional content, what with it being linear, it manages to give you a fresh, blood-pumping, tense and all-out assault that gives you total freeform control, no major restrictions on how you tackle the challenges ahead with obstacles and level design, and more bombastic and ridiculous odds to go against with every chapter. And the control, along with the game feel and multiple ways you can interact with the things around you, makes this all feel as natural and bouncy as possible, along with giving you some kick-ass cutscenes, memorable characters, quotable lines aplenty, amazing moments from Max himself, beautiful visuals, unique set pieces not really seen in games like this, and all topped off with an extremely conclusive and relieving ending, making you feel the true weight of everything you've done, and helping out a video game character get to that point has never been so calming and satisfying. It's a well-deserved and perfect wrap-up of the character arc of Max Payne himself, and that's what you need to remember. It's not a deep and complex thriller like the other games, it's just another addition to Max Payne's life. The games are named after and are about him, and that's why this game works so well. Max himself as a character carries it from the start to the end very well, and if you can make a relatively basic terrorist story third-person shooter unforgettable from your main character, you have something very special. Max Payne has been through one hell of a journey, and for all of you people that don't really like this game or haven't really wanted to try it out, well, if you just look at it as it is, it's another chapter to his life. It's not keeping with the theme that the other games went with, it's just an addition to Max Payne's life, hence the name of the game. It's not Film Noir the Game 3, it's Max Payne's life. If you look at it like that, you might enjoy it a little bit more. I'm not gonna force you, but I personally think this game's fucking awesome, and if you haven't played 1 or 2, I do still recommend you definitely do play 1 and 2, but also play 3. And now for another game I talked about not too long ago. I must be honest, I totally forgot how much I fucking love Condemned Criminal Origins. Imagine for a second if Ethan Carter went through puberty and decided that it was an over-aggressive punk ready to break people's legs with a rusty pipe, and you get this game, where you follow the exploits of another Ethan Thomas, solving a grisly and horrifying series of gory murders of serial killers by another serial killer, all the while trying to figure out who framed you for the murders that you're solving, all the while fighting off the deranged and disturbing residents of the seedier side of the city that have been driven insanely aggressive by a seemingly ever-present force. To do this, you must solve crimes with a vast array of cool gadgets, and use those gadgets to help you not only solve crime scenes, but also help you navigate the huge levels and protect yourself with whatever you can bloody find. Pipes, bits of wood, locker room doors, it's all right for the picking, and you'd better get used to constantly switching around these weapons because of the limited ammo for any kind of gun. So essentially what you have here is one of the best first-person survival horror games ever, as it stands with its oppressive atmosphere, enemies that are brilliant at hiding, ambushing, and disguising themselves, dark, terrifying alleys and hallways, and even paranormal shit like with the weird force turning everyone insane, and even parts that outright don't seem to make any sense at all and end up more terrifying as a result. But all of this happens in a grounded, urban, and totally gritty and realistic setting. It's scary enough as it stands, and there are tons of moments that deliberately pull you in only to then pounce on you, but it's also relatable and slightly realistic in its presentation, and that's the scariest thing of all. Rarely does it do anything so ridiculous that you can just accept it and not let it get to you. In this game, it can have that effect on you, and that's even more apparent in the combat. I mentioned in my top 10 horror games video that the combat is the coolest thing in this game, and I stand by it. Since guns don't have the most amount of ammo in the whole game, you're forced in more than one occasion to master the melee fights, and they are brutal. Everything is in your face, and the sound design and multiple kinds of swings you can pull off for specific situations and specific guards and blocks the enemies are making makes it also alive and visceral. You can't string combos together really, and you don't get bonuses for stringing them together, but what you do have is a one-on-one fight to the death with every single encounter, sometimes even more against you, and depending on where you hit them can cause them to counter easily and catch you off guard, or if you successfully block them, catch them off guard as they stumble. So you have to adapt and change your offense and defense approach for every single room you enter, every possible corner some twisted monstrous person could leap out from, and even towards the end of the game some of your tools become unavailable and you need to prove that you don't rely on any tricks as you fumble around with no choice but to tackle everything even more head on than before. You feel every swing and every impact, you feel like you're in these environments, you feel like every single thing that moves is going to get you, and this is all coupled alongside an intriguing plot like Seven had a threesome with Silence of the Lambs and Harry Brown with hilariously dated character models, and then you have a game that I don't think gets as much attention as it deserves, especially for horror fans. Look, even Markiplier's Let's Play has fuck all views. I honestly think the biggest crime that Ethan Thomas needs to solve in the end of it all is that this video got 50 times more views than the actual classic, and we all need to arrest ourselves for it. The apparent Citizen Kane of video games, The Last of Us is a great game, that's why it's on this list of my favourites, but to hold it to that high of a regard, I'm not so sure myself. I mean, comparing anything to the Citizen Kane of movies is already a dated and cliched thing to say anyway. I'm rambling though! The Last of Us really is an awesome experience, especially remastered on PS4, even if it was a little different from what was advertised with the enemy AI. If you take Uncharted with its third-person action shooting, linear approach level design with occasional stealth segments, and then downplay it, remove the spectacle, intensify the gameplay, massively deepen the story, and improve all of the stealth aspects while throwing in tons of survival stuff, you end up with one of the finest constructed viral outbreak games ever. And it's immediately clear from the intro chapter how special the game is, as you control a young girl, helpless and innocent, witnessing the carnage and insanity evolving all around her, only to then cut her life short in a gut-wrenching sequence and then throw you straight into the shoes of the now selfish, bitter, angry, and morally questionable father of that girl known as Joel, who's given a new job from his superiors to safely ship the potential savior of the world, Ellie, to where she needs to go. And the great thing about The Last of Us is that it may use many a cliche with its basic plot structure and looking for a cure stuff and blah, but it's the characters and the writing within the framework of the story that sells it above anything else. Whether you like it or not, or your opinions on what's right or wrong, you are stuck playing as someone that half the time you never really want to play as or do the things you have to do. And even as the end of the game dawns and the intro gets mirrored through the gameplay to make everything come full circle right up until the final moment of a dark, foreboding and completely dickish and helpless ending, it consistently seeps a bleak and utterly nasty atmosphere. And just when you think things will get better or the pressure will slightly get lifted, you then realize there's no happy endings for anyone in the universe of the game. Nobody can be trusted, and even if you come across seemingly evil characters you need to force your way through, you end up questioning who the real bad guy is. This is also illustrated through the way the story takes place over the course of an entire year, not only giving plenty of air for the characters to breathe and properly develop and feel a natural bond and connection from the transitional periods, but also with the themes of the story. The environments go from summery and sunny to wintry and treacherous, and even as you anticipate the relief of spring arriving and everything working out, it never does, which is also reflected in the gameplay. Primarily a stealth action-adventure game, The Last of Us gets all of that stuff nailed perfectly as it is, with very manageable environments to suit any situation, enemies that never stop changing tactics to gang you, and many different types of human and infected enemies that require you to change your attack style constantly. But with the survival horror elements and stealth gameplay, it makes it that much greater. Everything in the game has a limited amount of uses before you need to explore every nook and cranny of the environment to find crafting materials and often make them in real time, on the fly, in your backpack while being shot at or nearly eaten. And stealth kills are not only beneficial to saving resources, but also become the best way to deal with certain threats, like the terrifying blind clickers that see through sound. It's also amazing how you can open so many cupboards and drawers looking for singular bullets for guns, only to find absolutely nothing. That's the level of hopelessness this game has. And ammo is probably the most limited and treasured I've ever seen in a game like this. Yes, finding single bullets is a godsend, which then makes every shot you make in the game truly matter, and a huge deal for considering what you'll need in the future just in case a fucking bloater appears to completely wreck your shit, or be thrown into a huge and terrifying ambush in a dark, flooded hotel basement with no ammo, no time to think, no way to pause the action to craft vital health and weapons to protect yourself, and constant needs to move around, explore, and keep the entire situation you're in under wraps without a slight hint of panic. And this isn't even mentioning the details to make you really think, like the world almost seeming to be in the most beautiful and serene state it ever could be once the outbreak occurs and nature completely dominates the gorgeously desolate landscape. And the fact that the viral infection is a real thing that happens in real life with ant colonies. The houses and shelters you raid with visual hints to show how those characters were in the past, seeing corpses holding hands on beds and seeing graffiti and even baby toys scattered around, panicked and emotional diary entries and SOS notes, and how even though pretty linear, every single microscopic detail was thought about with the magnificent art style and so good you could touch them graphics and so good you can picture them sitting on the sofa next to you voice acting. I wouldn't say it was a total game changer, but I would say that The Last of Us is an unforgettable modern classic, and one that's even better to play on PS4, so please do give it a go if you haven't already. Another game I spoke pretty in depth about rather recently, Silent Hill 3, after kind of seesawing between 2 and 3, I think is my favorite Silent Hill game because it encompasses everything that made 1 and 2 great and then takes everything up a crazy notch. Sure, it isn't as poetic, symbolic, and deeply crafted as 2, but I would still rate 3 as good as 2, and honestly I find it the more memorable and better designed video game as a whole, more than the masterful depressing overtones 2 goes for. Nah, as an all-out survival horror game, I think 3 does the best job of it, not to mention throwing in some of the most memorable characters in the entire series, best voice acting, disgusting and vile plot details, and most imaginative and tricky puzzles the entire series has ever shown us. And brilliantly enough, it still manages to be symbolic and still manages to be subtle and questionable with everything that happens in front of you, while going all out in your face from the second you enter Silent Hill right up until the end of the game. You know what this game feels like? A Hellraiser. The gore, the splashes of dingy, fleshy shades of red, the paranormal and unexplainable spooks. It's a game about descending into hell itself, blurring the line between reality and fiction, and takes every advantage it can with that subject, throwing you into disturbing boss encounters, pitting your limited ammo and clunky moveset against demented and unhinged monstrosities hiding in every corner of the game, and in my favourite aspect of the entire game, really expresses and explores the effectiveness of rooms in video games. Small, boxy, claustrophobic, sometimes even pointless and with nothing in them other than to unsettle you and sometimes outright kill you after scaring the shit out of you, making you completely helpless as hell itself consumes you. The level of anxiety and unpredictability in Silent Hill 3 is off the charts since you don't have a clue what will happen as you walk into any singular room, and the game relishes in moments like that. Not conquering fears for rewards or anything predictable like that, just random rooms that might have something in them, but might not, and only exist to freak you the fuck out. It's so cool. To heighten this are the classically panic-inducing tank controls that can often get you confused and suicidal as punishment for not keeping a cool head or zoning out of the game. And backing all of this up are some of the best visuals and lighting effects the PS2 ever processed, insane levels of detail with sights and sounds, inhuman and jittery animations, and some of the most memorable set pieces in any survival horror game out there, like the amusement park, the shopping mall, the haunted house attraction, which actually scared the shit out of me the first time I played it when I was like, I don't know, 14, 12, and I can't sing the praises of the mirror room in the hospital enough. Such a beautifully subtle yet utterly horrifying and panic-inducing moment. It was a close call between 2 and 3, but overall Silent Hill 3 I actually think may be my favourite, but not without good reason. I was never the biggest fan of Fallout 3. Not that I don't like the game, I like it a lot, and especially the side missions, but I honestly never found the main campaign that interesting whatsoever, and the ending kind of fucking shit. Everything else was pretty awesome though. Fallout 4 I fucking loved, and I was gonna put it here, but then my mind drifted over to the originals that started it all, and for a pure, raw, compact, unforgettable, and primal strategic apocalypse game, my money goes to the first game, Fallout. I also really liked Fallout 2, but to be honest, it had so much going on that in my personal opinion, the original charm and driving force behind it was kind of lost. I mean, I love big games, but bigger doesn't always mean better. And for as short as Fallout 1 is, I believe it delivered a much more focused and memorable experience to me. Not to mention the most fucking horrifying story that by the end I had no idea what to even make of it, and it stuck with me for hours after I finished it. This thing. This is one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen in a video game. And in the context of the story, it's tragic and just downright horrible. You begin the game as a vault dweller living underground with a colony while world wars raged on top of Earth's surface. And after your water recycling chip breaks, you have only 150 days, which are counted down to make the game 10 million times more stressful, to repair it. Doing that isn't easy though, as you discover from the first steps you take out of the vault. Those bodies there sum up everything you need to know. Even when these guys were so close to the safety of the vault, the world around them made them suffer. You talk to many interesting characters with lots of awesome voice acted dialogue, figure out what to do and where to go completely by yourself, learn the politics and factions at war above the surface and who is worth avoiding or messing with, loot anything and everything you can without upsetting anybody around you, especially in cities, fill up your map and take note of important landmarks and towns, find the occasional sneaky Easter egg. Oh, and yeah, fight your way through horrific mutants, scroungers and devilish creatures in order to complete side objectives and ultimately bring water back to your people. And unlike later games where you can pretty much just shoot your way out of any situation and react accordingly, here, what with it having RTS elements, all encounters run on energy meters, they're all turn-based, and every attack you do and move you make costs energy, making fights themselves a fuck ton more stressful and scary to get past, and running away sometimes is even harder. In the world of Fallout, everything wants you dead, and sometimes not even for personal reasons, it's often for the exact same reasons you're killing everyone, looting and supplies. And this makes the odd friendly NPC encounter mean that much more and make the characters a million times more impactful to the story, your progression, and just more memorable overall, especially considering that people live and die constantly, and quests fail all the time depending on your choices. In Fallout, you not only connect with the smaller and more memorable map than the other games in a more intimate way, but also feel the weight of everything on your shoulders the more secrets you uncover about the world. And I love more than anything how much the character creation and special stats system means the most in the older Fallouts. Since some quests can be skipped, some characters are sweet-talked, some armor can be worn, computers hacked, crime bosses beaten up, doors unlocked, anything you can imagine is affected by where you invest time and effort into each particular stat, which then give you little bonuses to add on that affect the whole gameplay and how it works around you. And I adore the hundreds of dialogue trees and personal character speech you can perform that come about from your stats as well. One of my favorites being if you meet the Master with no intelligence at all, like here.
So what shall it be? Do you join the Unity, or do you die here?
Join.
Die!
Join.
Die! Why am I talking? It's unlikely you even understand.
So yeah, despite the humble beginnings and dated look of the whole thing, the dense and tight design, vast, threatening world, strategic gameplay, horrifying details, and engaging narrative help make the original Fallout one of my favorites I've ever played. And seriously, fuck this guy, he's the worst. To go away and leave me, get out. I'm just gonna be honest right now. If anything, Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon is here on this list because I wanted an excuse to use a song from one of the best PS1 soundtracks of all time. The best Spyro soundtrack by far, and best Spyro game in my personal opinion by even farther. For those who don't know, before Spyro looked like my breakfast after I shit it out in the evening, his classic PS1 trilogy was one of 3D exploration collectathon platforming action with the added badass gimmick of being a dragon, meaning gliding, horn maneuvers, and breathing fire were at the forefront of his control scheme. And at the time, the trilogy was one of the best for the genre. It started off a little bit iffy if you ask me, but then got much better, and then was utterly perfected by number 3. Every single element that didn't work from the last two were removed, and everything that did work was included and tweaked to create the absolute best Spyro 3D adventure in my opinion, with plenty of memorable characters, funny dialogue, extra characters with their own abilities to play as, revisiting stages later on with the correct character to finish it all off, and every single stage feeling like a living, breathing entity of its own. It doesn't feel like you're exquisitely platforming around stages based on a theme of the hub world, it feels like you're entering portals to more miniature adventures within themselves, with species in these worlds having their own ecosystems, own speaking style, own lifestyles and beliefs, own specialized locations and unique visuals and level designs that can often be so adorable with their art styles and animations that you feel the drive to help them out, as well as rescue all of the baby dragon eggs that were stolen by the big baddie of this game, the horrible bitchy sorceress who in an extreme Cruella de Vilism wants to rip off their wings for everlasting life. What the fuck? And with so many eggs to find in so many stages unlocked with these eggs, this is a huge game and one of the most satisfying collectathon action games of all time, helped along by all of the extra optional content such as exploring each stage top to toe and finding all of the gems which help you unlock more things and let you pay the asshole moneybags for whatever shitty scheme he's cooking up, finding Hunter, the loyal yet slightly cowardly cheater hidden in the speedway levels for super secret awesome bonus challenges for more eggs, and even Sparks the Dragonfly top-down shooter parts to get extra abilities like hit points for Spyro and pointing towards missing gems if you hold down the triggers. Everything you do in this game feels like it means something, and you get to cling onto that feeling while battling your way through dozens of enemy types with their own special tricks and enjoying the breathtaking PS1 visuals that alone make every stage a complete joy to charge your way around with responsive controls. Also, I want to shove this soundtrack up my ass, and I know I said it was a gimmick, but that's not entirely true, since yes, you are a dragon, but the game takes every advantage it can with that fact, giving you hidden areas only accessible with flight power-ups, special locations that can only be glided to from afar at the highest point of the level, and the same applies to all the other characters, like with Sheila the kangaroo needing to leap as high as possible for extra goodies, and Sergeant Bird the flight-blessed penguin being able to fly literally anywhere he wants to in his stages while firing rockets. So fucking great. Boss encounters are also amazing and way fucking better than the worst bosses in video game history from Spyro 1. Mini games are mostly all a fantastic change of pace, especially the extremely fast-paced, simple and flowing skateboarding games and races, and since it's so satisfying to play through every single stage and collect as much as possible, helped along with those sweet-ass gem sound effects, when you get to the completion bonus of an entire other level to play through that allows you to steal the treasure of the sorceress, track down thieves within her realm and get a super fly and super breath power up to finish everything off, fight the sorceress again with every gem and egg, and then get a cute alternate ending for the cherry on top. It's just... this fucking game, man. There's a reason it's one of my favorites, and I highly suggest that you get it on the PS Store in the Spyro trilogy. Trust me, it's a total steal of a bargain, and I would say worth it alone just to beat up that fucking dude. Moneybags for every single gem he selfishly took from you. Oh my god, if any game was deserving of having the word legend in it, Rayman Legends is indeed that game. One of the finest 2D platformers I've ever played, and just from you looking at it, I bet you can understand why. I mean, this looks on par, if not better than many millions of dollar budget animated movies, and this is a fucking player input video game. So absolutely gobsmacking, living, breathing, painting visuals and delightfully cartoony animations aside, what makes Rayman Legends live up to its namesake? Oh, I don't know, everything! It does everything you'd expect from a 2D platformer like this with the moveset Rayman and his friends have to work with, such as sprinting, swimming, punching, and wall jumping. But the way the level designs and environments within those levels all weave around each other make the entire game flow a lot better and a lot less slippery than in Origins. But no matter, because a lot of Origin stages were redone and put into Legends as it stands, along with another 120 plus original stages and more things to unlock than grains of salt in a shaker. Not counting the highly fun secrets and tiny side pockets of stages to explore that can be easily revisited at any point within the stages with a slick checkpoint system in case you thought you missed something. Co-op is delightful as much as single player actually. The 3D spliced boss bosses really pop out both visually and as stages themselves. The Murphy stages, especially on PS Vita's touchscreen, are immense amounts of fun, and the main thing I love more than anything in Rayman Legends is the pure rhythm behind it. Every enemy, collectible and obstacle has specifically focused and ingenious placement to make some of the stages entirely possible to 100% without letting go of the run or sprint button because of the rhythm oozing out of the core gameplay. And you can bounce, zip and punch away as fast as possible, so much that even a few bonus stages at the end of the game exploit the rhythmic bones and ultra responsive control of the game, giving you outright music-based levels with insanely catchy songs as you time every action you do around the beats of the songs. Hitting punches, jumping, bopping enemies' heads, never stopping to breathe. And if you think that sounds a little bit stale, well, just watch someone playing through the fucking ridiculousness, difficulty and biggest spectacles of 2D platforming stages I've probably ever seen in my life, with the musical and 8-bit bonus levels. They're so fucking insane I can't even describe them, and no matter how difficult they are, they never fail to make you smile from the sense of humor the game has. And how exactly can you make water levels equally as fast-paced, flowing, controlled and rhythmic as the rest of the game? Well, Rayman Legends is your answer. It makes water levels good. The pure amount of charm and effort gone into this masterful Rayman installment not only proves that 2D platformers are still alive, kicking and fucking brilliant when done right, but also proves that it's completely possible to take a classic IP, revamp it to brilliance, and then improve and expand on the brilliance without compromising anything, without cash grabbing, and without lazily pushing out something else because of the success of the games before it. It's a brief reminder that the game industry can do well at things sometimes. It's amazing to see a more traditional game like this done so well, and it only fills me with great confidence about the future of true 2D platformers and even old IPs returning, because Rayman Legends proves that it not only can be done, but if done right, and especially after the great reboot before it, could even be the defining game for the entire series it originally resurrected. Has anyone played Kung Foot as well? It's like Tekken Ball, but with infinitely better control. This is worth price of admission alone, I can tell you that much. I'm not going to say for a second that Crash Team Racing on PS1 is underappreciated, but it's definitely overshadowed in my opinion. I love Mario Kart and to an extent Diddy Kong Racing, but when you're as big and as universally appealing as Nintendo that you can get away with just using every mascot at once in a fantastic kart racer every few years, it says a lot to me that a game featuring characters from one game series with collectively nowhere near as much brand recognition or consumer trust as Nintendo could make a kart racer that is not only one of my favourite ones to ever be made, but also one of the best ever made from mechanics alone in my opinion. And so good that it comes to a point where you don't need to know a single thing about Crash Bandicoot or even like his games to appreciate the epicness that Crash Team Racing has to offer. The feeling you get from jumping into drifts and hitting the other jump button to boost while drifting, the vigorous and angry sound design of roaring engines battling with the classic bouncy and characterized soundtrack, the immense satisfaction of nailing a jump off a ramp just right only to then hit the ground and auto boost potentially into another ramp that you jump higher off of and then get a bigger boost as you land and chain them all together. It's so satisfying and realistic with weights of the cart and responsive that some of the additional challenges in the campaign mode next to the racing actually test all of your knowledge of not only the insanely creative and unforgettable level designs and where shortcuts are, but also these core mechanics. And the game pushes you to think outside the box and make you use whoever you think best suits your playing style with their card stats before throwing you into situations where you need to come to first place while being able to jump up and over on top of the levels that you previously figured were inaccessible. In CTFR, which of course stands for Crash Team Fucking Racing, anything goes. And even in the simplest of races, smashing boxes and getting the insane number of power-ups that come and go every half a second can make a simple figure 8 track intense and invigorating. I guess it was slightly annoying that you needed an extension to play 4 players on the PS1, but now with the advent of PS3 Virtual Console downloads, it's easier than ever to grab 3 other friends and have at it in one of the most hectic and insanely satisfying racing games out there. All sprinkled with very charming overworlds for the adventure campaign mode, and for driving cars at least, some pretty great bosses. And considering Naughty Dog were only signed on to make 3 Crash Bandicoot games on PS1 with Universal, and then basically made this game as a solitary bonus after they got the idea from finishing Crash Bandicoot 2 and pretty much had the game ready and finished before the contract with Universal expired, this is all a testament to Naughty Dog and the kind of games that they make. Kind of sad we never got to see Uncharted though. Or the carts of us. It was so difficult for me to pick my favorite Mario game. Super Mario 64, Super Mario World, New Super Mario Bros, Yoshi's Island, there are so many to pick from. But for my money, the original Super Mario Galaxy, and not just because it has one of the best composed and exuberant orchestral soundtracks of all time. Why not Super Mario Galaxy 2, you may be wondering? Well, to be honest with you, it's the same problem I have with most modern Mario games, and it's a personal problem of mine, a lack of immersion and pure character. I mean, there's a stage selection, and it strips out a lot of the elements the original did to make way for just more levels that end up being more forgettable as a result of that, along with other reasons that aren't for this video. No. Great game Super Mario Galaxy 2 is, but the original Galaxy had everything I was hoping for in a game with Mario in space, and the only thing I have a major problem with are the situational power-ups that could have had a little bit more expanding upon. Everything else I think was close to perfect for a stage-based 3D Mario game not quite as open-ended as Mario 64, and I could praise so much about how the Wii is being pushed to its limits with the visuals, and how the motion control is actually pretty fucking rocked without being in your face, and how some of the most beautiful and imaginative level designs I've ever seen are in this game, especially with how it uses gravity as a unique and badass gameplay shifter. But more than anything, I think this is one of the most atmospheric platformers I've ever played. Playing through each stage with its huge stark contrasts of life forms and ecosystems to see and other world-specific challenges is great enough, but even just running around the Comet Observatory hub world with the gentle, cheerful waltz floating along with the distant cosmos as you run and bounce your way to the next planet to blast off to and open up endless excitement in a vastly different series of planets is an experience I cannot even compare anything else to. So much so that the fact that there are no optional things to really do in the hub world never really bothered me whatsoever. Just the inner serenity the game is pulsating with and draws you into, only to then tear a smile into your skin from all the brilliant gameplay and presentation elements working together on every stage, is enough to make your body ache. And yes, the gameplay and controls just fucking rock. Go at your own pace, explore, complete missions however you bloody want to with multiple ways of getting around and rewards for mastering the controls. Fantastic Mario staple boss encounters, and you get a game that's just as good as Galaxy Chocolate. To top it off are the surprisingly deep insinuations of the slowly revealing storybook of Rosalina. Way more cinematic and epic moments for Bowser to truly make him a threat again, and wrapping some of those strongest narrative Mario elements in the entire platforming series, not including the RPG games, around a truly gargantuan, joyful adventure in the depths of space to all manner of different planets, and being able to do it all over again as Luigi if you beat the game 100% makes the prospect of replaying such a fantastic game even more fantastic. With not only a different skin and a couple of different missions, but different controls also. The fact Nintendo never acted on a Galaxy 3 in the Wii U's short lifespan with the door-opening potential of the gamepad depresses me, but who knows what the future of Spaceman Ryo has in store for all of us, lest he gives up and visits Grass Planet, Desert Planet, Snow Planet, Castle Planet, Sky Planet, Beach Planet, Mountain Planet. Yes, I know, I broke my own rules on one game per franchise. Give me a fucking break, you twat! I'm really sorry, but I just couldn't leave out another one of my favorite 3D platformers of all time. I just couldn't. And hey, CTR's a racing game and Crash 3 is a platformer, so shut the fuck up. Crash Bandicoot 3, much like Spyro 3, is the ultimate culmination and the perfect understanding of taking everything from the last games that worked and just refining and adding more to what was already there to make it the definitive way to play the entire series. Maybe I'm a little biased here because this was the first video game I ever played in my life at 4 years old when this game first released, or maybe it's the incredible linear 3D platforming stages, unbelievably fluid and ultra fast and rewarding gameplay and controls, revisitable and further rewarding parts of stages for people who master them, multi-useful and brilliant power-ups that completely change the dynamics between you and the stages, some of the best Crash bosses ever put into a disc with exceptional voice acting and top-notch animations, the toe-tapping multi-genre soundtrack for the ingeniously tongue-in-cheek and visually distinctive sexy polygon time travel story, the new collectibles which can often involve needing new power-ups to grab them and then unlock more levels for alternate routes for old levels to get more collectibles, and I could go on and on to be honest with you, so do you at least see why I broke the rules a little bit with this entry? For a 32-bit linear 3D platformer, Crash 3 fucking owned the PS1 as far as I'm concerned, and it has so much going for it. I've replayed this game countless times and know it like the back of my hand, and ever since I got my Vita, I've always left it there, ready for me to replay whenever I feel like it, or try my hand on getting every single platinum relic in the game for the time trials, the true test of your knowledge of the stages and the gameplay mechanics. And you may call them artificial gameplay lengtheners, but I call it a totally different approach to playing through the stages you love, and one of the greatest challenges in gaming history. I am still only 3 platinums away from a complete set Fucking hell. All I'm saying is that there is a reason people have regarded Naughty Dog to such a high level, and there's a reason that people like myself were always drawn to the PS1 over Nintendo, and it was because of games like this. Crash Bandicoot 3 is fucking badass, no other words. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I was a stupid fucking shit pants little kid and I didn't know what a video game was, and then they just wanted to play, my parents just wanted to play PS1 and not Nintendo. It's not that, no. There's no silly gimmicks, no lack of effort, no expense spared, no dated mechanics, no age gap it doesn't apply to, and nothing but surprise that Naughty Dog managed to churn this out just over a year after the previous game, which itself was only out a year after the original game. Crash Bandicoot 3 is one of the many reasons I still adore PS1, and if you haven't played it, I feel sorry for you. If I can put a game on this list that I've barely even scratched the surface of, you know it's something truly special, and The Witcher 3 is exactly that, special. Made by a relatively unknown team as far as the AAA space is concerned, CD Projekt Red, I still can't believe how fucking great The Witcher 3 is. Like I said, I've barely even scratched the surface. I'm, just over 40 hours into it, and I'm barely even halfway through the story. Not from lack of trying though, not because I got bored or anything, I literally just haven't had time to fully sink my teeth into it, and I'm sure if I did finish it, I could stick it a bit higher up this list. As it stands though, my god, it hurts my head to even think about all the amazing shit this game does for up to the point that I've played it. The world and the sheer scale of it and how it manages to fit so much into its disc, from hidden areas, secrets, and even vertical design as well as horizontal with mountains and underground caves and temples is gobsmacking. And how they made every single inch of it worth exploring and worth taking in, I have no fucking clue. The sun effects, the weather, and overall visual quality literally made me audibly say wow to myself when I bathed in them right in front of the TV, and the impeccably constructed, witty, and engaging dialogue and voice acting makes it a treat for the ears as well as the eyes. In fact, I'd go as far as to say this game looks better than real life. I'm not joking. Does this face look like a joke face to you? I mean, just traveling around the world and finding every little thing, looting bodies and cleaning up scummy people around all the local towns and villages is enough of a great time on its own, and the combat for as responsive and fulfilling the mix of sword combat, dodging, and spells up is pretty damn difficult and requires a decent amount of time to engage with the world and learning with all the weaknesses and appropriate use of the broad range of spells for every kind of beast, poltergeist, and human enemy. And no matter if you fight single enemies or intelligent groups, it's always a pleasure, especially with the gargantuan boss monsters and how often you need to lure them out and take care of their homes yourself like a proper hunter in the open world would do, but with the added bonus of fantasy beasts that make every single encounter worthy of a best of gaming moments list from whatever fucking year this game came out. The tiny little side missions are a fantastic change of pace from the fist fights and horse racing to card games and even proper fucking reading. Yes, some puzzles are solved by what you read in things yourself, and the RPG elements are insanely deep and infinitely customizable and manageable for those into a good old Tinkerfest. And another fantastic thing about the game is how unexploitative money is, so choices on what to sink rare items to and what to buy, upgrade, or repair require a lot of thought. But my absolute favourite part of this whole thing though are the proper meaty side quests. Along with the main story, or from what I've seen so far, the side missions I've played through have enough story, emotion, and mystery with interesting characters packed into them to make them better than most standalone modern game campaigns released today. And they're oftentimes utterly grotesque and always brimming with original ideas. And you could be battling, puzzling, and exploring your way through all of this while dealing with the dialogue trees and how they affect character relationships, who lives and dies, XP bonuses, and quest direction all at the same time. It's incredible. Let alone for the value on display here. Even though at full retail price, the amount of content you get is absolutely jaw-dropping. The size of what you have to play in is worth 3 games plus, and the PS4 version I got the game in even came with its own fucking CD soundtrack, so I could listen to one of the greatest, most epic, badass, and often tear-jerking scores in modern gaming history in the car while doing my fucking shopping. Even as I speak, there are new expansions, and the game itself has dropped a lot in value, so if you haven't played Witcher 1 or 2, I wouldn't say it matters too much. Do yourself a huge favour and fucking own Witcher 3. It's a million times better than I could have ever imagined, and I'll be getting back into it whenever I can for many years to come. You wanna know what I think the best Wii U game ever made is? Bayonetta 2. I fucking adore this game, and I adored it from the beginning of the game. Look at my Instagram. See? I was in love in a few minutes. For those unaware, Bayonetta is a series by Platinum Games, or as I like to call them, slashy bang funny big face games, because that's all you really get with them, but at least they are the best at what they do when it comes to it. And after going through possibly the greatest intro sequence ever put into a game, splicing cutscenes and gameplay seamlessly while making you laugh and making your teeth fall out because they are clean enough to look at them through your gawping smile, you're then thrown into a dark yet luscious and vivid world with some of the most polished and breathtaking 60 FPS console visuals you'll ever see, and some of the simplest to understand yet deepest and crazy to execute gameplay in the hack and slash genre that has ever been made. With only a few buttons ever being used at one time, the whole game plays like how you see it, but true enlightenment and true gratification comes to those who practice the endless combos in the practice screens and get all of the timings, button holds, and combinations correct. And of course, using your secondary gun weapons not just for keeping on top of the nonsense from a distance, but keeping your combos higher, your scores and rating higher, and therefore your rewards higher. It's a game of constant feedback and instant highs, and the adrenaline only increases the better at the game you get and the more you unlock to help you as your ratings improve. And the bigger you see the number on the combo meter rise, the bigger you get stimulated, because nothing here is artificial. It's not scores for the sake of scores, everything here helps you, and the incentive to improve with greater rewards also helps you get better at the game anyway, like with filling up your special ultra powerful hair attack meter, and insane magic spells ready to take on some of the greatest boss battles I've ever fucking seen in my life. My god. Wow. From pure spectacle alone, this game is worth every single penny. Not to say that's all the game has going for it though, it's still an extremely intense hack and slash with tons of button smashing and an extremely silly story, but there's still the looking around for hidden secrets, there's still the platforming elements, the fluent controls, and the fact that you can't mash your way to the end of the game because of the extremely deadly and aggressively unforgiving enemies, who not only require different combos and approaches to your primary and secondary weapon attacks, but also require precise and pinpoint dodging to exploit. And with your magical witch time ability, every successful dodge grants you a few seconds to slow down time and deal as much damage as possible before heading into the chaos once again. So not only your offensive strategy, but also defensive and attention-keeping strategy is constantly monitored and rewarded accordingly. And yes, like all the other sequels I've mentioned in this huge-ass video series, the game improves on everything that was a little bit iffy in the original Bayonetta. The story I found a lot more self-aware and ridiculous, but also with many more serious and awesome character moments for a much more personal outing than the broadness of the original. The visuals are more interesting, the bosses are more extravagant, the currency system with its mechanical balance and fairness with combat move unlocking and health regen purchasing is a lot more logical and forgiving. The exploration and all the other items you can find to craft together and other side challenges to unlock even more stylish and amazing shit to help you, and hell, even the specifically catered Nintendo costumes with all the specific correct weaponry from the costumes makes it all the more fucking amazing. You know what, as controversial as this may be for me to say, but I personally believe this justified my entire purchase of the Wii U alone. Yes, dead serious. I goddamn bloody love Bayonetta 2. Yes, another practically perfect survival horror game to add to the list, the Resident Evil remake, and especially the HD re-release. The original Resident Evil on PS1 will always be a cheesy yet revolutionary horror classic which took everything that Alone in the Dark and Sweet Home cornered the market with and successfully mainstreamed it while defining what worked so well with the slightly up-and-coming young genre of survival horror. And what better way to continue that legacy than with this game? Not just a remake, not just a visual boost, but a total and utter reimagining of the formula and what everyone comes to expect from it. The only things even slightly similar from this and the original game are a couple of familiar rooms and designs, most of the story elements, most of the enemies and the characters. But everything else from the soundtrack, additional rooms and outbuildings, death trap puzzles, increased lore and disturbing backstory elements, and the mother-humping atmosphere are either changed or jacked up to shit hundred and fuck. Even if you remember the original game and the standout moments of it like the back of your hand, remake replaces them. Jump scares and enemy ambushes are different, yet still scare the shit out of you from a subtle hint or nod to what you expected was going to happen from the original game. And then when you least expect it, later on, you'll be knocked off your high horse and forced to tackle everything in a panic with barely any damn ammo, no room to carry decent guns, important items and health all at the same time, figuring out what you should drop and retrieve later, or use right now at a risk and often running away dreading what might appear in the next static camera angle of this demented and awfully beautiful mansion. And if anything, along with the soul-crushing and mind-absorbing atmosphere, probably one of the best ever put into a video game, that's what the remake does better than anything else. Not just the element of surprise and expectation shifting, but the way it adds all the additional horrifying mechanics into the surprise factor to create moments of sheer panic that I've never experienced before in my life. You think you overcame everything by killing that zombie in front of you? Tough shit, because later on at any random time, the dead body lying there every single time you walk down the same high traffic revisited areas will quickly get up, hiss and snarl and start chasing you as a crimson head. So I guess that serves you right to not strategically figure out when to take your lighter with you and decide to burn the body, but then do you want to do that because that takes up a space of your inventory slot? Is that spider on the wall in the grounds house going to do anything to you? I don't know, to be honest, it's not that clear. All you're really doing is intruding on their house. They will just sit there and not do anything unless you give them a reason to move, but what are you gonna do to make them move, Oh, what's that? You read some diaries about a family locked in the mansion when it was being built, and they were tortured and experimented on with bioweapon viruses, and it turns out that one of the family members wearing the faces and skins of her family who is completely invulnerable to bullets is on the loose and ready to fucking murder you? And my god, these pre-rendered backgrounds, even with the slight flickering lights and tiny animations going on, they all feel like living, breathing works of art in themselves. And this contributes towards the design of the mansion and the surrounding areas. The first time I ever played through this game, because of the ingenious shortcuts, hidden keys for doors, and constant backtracking through high traffic areas with those supposedly dead zombies waiting for me, I connected with the world so much I never forgot the design of it. I know it inside out from one playthrough, and it's a total honor to experience it all over again whenever I replay it. When you say survival horror, I think the Resident Evil remake. And when you say dinner, I think of a Jill sandwich.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
Am I going to get hate for this? Maybe, but I don't care. Metal Gear Solid 4 I don't think is the best overall Metal Gear Solid game from gameplay and replayability. For me, that's a tricky battle between 2 and 3, but it's certainly my favourite game because of what it stands for. Since Metal Gear is such a convoluted and confusing series as it is, picking number 4 and even trying to justify why I love it so much isn't going to be as cut and dry as many of the other games in this series of videos I've talked about. What you see here doesn't really illustrate exactly what the game does or what it is. From face value, you have a stealth action game with pretty great and unique boss encounters, multiple ways to progress in practically any fucking way you want to, and some of the longest yet most engaging cutscenes ever put into a video game. And to be honest, those elements are all pretty fucking fantastic. But most of the elements at work here will not mean a thing to people who don't like MGS in the first place, and it's this air of speciality and almost fan exclusivity that makes it feel like a true game made exactly for the target audience it was meant for without pandering to broader demographics. Along with the themes of closure, legacy, and finality in the story that the game director, Hideo freaking Kojima, wanted to mirror as a message from himself. It's fan service the video game, I will admit that, but one with so much detail and so much richness and intelligent undertones that only the true fans will appreciate and adore every single aspect thrown in. Along with accepting it being the final chapter in a saga they equally adore, and all of these themes basically coming straight from Kojima's head as he represents the main character, Old Snake. Then they fucked that emotional ending up with this fucking story. But either way, if you look at MGS4 simply as an artistic expression from the director, if you look at it as a message from himself put into video game form, it's so fucking smart. Old Snake isn't Solid Snake anymore. He's tired, he can't keep up. You can't expect him and force him to do this forever. His legacy and memories are what he wants to pass down before outright embarrassing himself. And at the time at least, the extremely twisting and branching plot lines from all the other games combined pretty much all got concluded in some way or another, leading to an ending sequence that's about as long as a fucking movie, yet still brought me to absolute tears. Seriously, this is the only game that has truly made me fucking cry my eyes out, and for that reason alone, I could consider it my favourite MGS. It invested me and carried me through so much that everything in the story that was signified and everything the characters I'd grown up with were going through, I just couldn't handle anymore. And the last boss battle is one of the most amazing final encounters in gaming history, from every emotional, nostalgic, ingenious, and incredible phase it goes through with the soundtrack and the heads-up display shifts and everything. It's just amazing. And this is all in a series infamous for cheesy lines and over-exposition, but I tell you, some singular tiny lines in this game resonate and are so fucking poetic and perfectly reflect on everything Kojima wanted to say and do, and it's just brilliant. And I even love how it still doesn't take itself so seriously, from the self-aware fourth wall breaking and entire minutes and minutes of pre-intro sequences where you can choose what channels of a TV to watch and see how the world works before you play the game. And the satire and writing is perfectly on point from start to end. Graphically gorgeous, ear candy audio, and full of that trademark Kojima direct player emotional engagement to make you feel exactly how the characters feel in the game, and the fourth wall breaking with the PS3 hardware and controller gimmicks, jokes, and ingenious little puzzles and references with the hardware are as high as they were in the first game, with moments like the entire Psycho Mantis boss fight. Okay, it never reaches that kind of level, but it's still extremely prevalent. And yeah, like I said, the game itself is fun, varied, challenging, and just total badassy, while encompassing and embracing every single ridiculous thing MGS has been called out for and just rolling with it. It's the essential MGS experience in my opinion, and I love it. I don't recommend this for newcomers whatsoever, and it definitely isn't a game for everybody, but I do consider MGS4 to be one of the best and most unforgettable games I've ever played. This here is not only my favourite horror game ever made, but also probably the scariest I've ever played, and that still gets me to this day. Call me whatever you want to call me, that's just how it affects me. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Did that sound like a very similar introduction to the section I made in my top 10 horror games video when I spoke about this game? Yes, well, to be perfectly honest, I was quite proud on how I summed up my feelings for Amnesia in that video, so I'm just going to retread a lot of what I said and add a few bits in. Consider this like an extended thoughts kind of thing, I hope you don't mind. But yeah, why do I consider this my favourite horror game? It's not the best looking game on this list, nor is it the deepest with the gameplay, but all it's concerned about is making you wake up with amnesia.
It's funnier the second time you tell the joke.
And not only have your main character confused and remembering everything that happened in this demented castle you're in, but also the player confused by battling multiple gameplay mechanics with no single straight objective and no single straight story, as you are uncovering everything bit by bit, being disturbed by the monstrous shitheads and other characters, and then being even more disturbed as you piece together why it's all happening. It's a game set out to disorient and unsettle you from the start, and it doesn't just do that from presentation and story, but gameplay also. Most horror games in which you're running for your life in dimly lit corridors rely on, well, just that, and you being spotted or not determines on you being chased. And the punishment for failure is death, a slight bit of aggravation, and an attempt again. It's basically a two-way gameplay shift experience. But here, I get so freaked out in this game that any progress I lose while panicking and dying usually leads me to being more afraid of replaying everything I already conquered and therefore more afraid of death itself. And it doesn't help how the fucked up designs of these things are the things that will grant death to you. Or, you know, an invisible water monster, that's always something. Now, this isn't just a two-way gameplay shifting experience. Compared to other horror games, there are conflicts of priorities constantly. You could be solving a puzzle that requires exploring different rooms for each piece while hiding for your life as the sickly animated monsters and droning ear-ringing music rises. Then solving said puzzle in a big room with lots of things to look at and lots of levers to pull while checking behind your shoulder for something that might have followed you in. You could be putting your lantern out to keep hidden in the darkness away from the monsters, but doing this affects your sanity, making you see and hear awful things to not only freak you out but also distort your play even more. And saying that, lantern oil is extremely limited, as are tinder boxes to light torches around the castle, so even if you think you can get away with playing safely or risking using a lot of light to keep your sanity up but then keeping yourself open to be spotted, you can't do that really. You have barely any control. Cowardness is not rewarded, slow thinking is not rewarded, and basically Amnesia rocks. Amnesia is unforgettable. That's a fucking awful joke. Bayonetta 2 may be worth the investment on spectacle alone, but the original game that sold me entirely on the crazy shit and insane spectacle in front of me was Uncharted 2. I'm currently showing off the PS4 remasters, but still, apart from the flawless 60 FPS and way higher quality textures, it isn't too far away from what the PS3 version went for, and holy fuck does it ever push the hardware to boiling point. Look at these visuals and animations, man, and bear in mind this was a massive step up from the already beautiful original game. Production values don't automatically save a game though, so what more can I say about it? Well, this game puts you in control of one of the greatest gaming action heroes ever made, Nathan Drake, whom through countless fantastic dialogue exchanges, terrific voice acting, a spiffing sense of humor, and surrounded by equally memorable and brilliant characters, must basically cheat death 24/7 in one of the greatest linear third-person action-adventure shooting games ever fucking made. When I first saw this game, I was in awe of what I was playing through most of the time, and from the very beginning, in another one of my favorite introductory sequences in a video game ever made, as you hang off of a train wreck on the edge of a cliff, the intensity and sudden stomach-churning moments where you think it's all over unless you are careful never stopped on the dizzying platforming and low-level gun massacres, and the smile never left my face from how entertaining both cutscenes and gameplay were together. Topping it off with springier controls, better climbing and platforming, and improved gunplay, insanely better set pieces, and characters to actually love or hate within them, better stealth mechanics with snappier inputs and results, and the best Uncharted ending encounter sequence with a proper fucking awful and sickening bad guy that were all improved from the original game. I don't know, as an action-adventure romp while you Indiana Jones but with more murder your way all over the damn world through snow, jungles, museums, and war trenches alike, Uncharted 2 does absolutely everything right. I have no complaints with it. It's just the right length with just the right variety, just the right amount of story against gameplay, just the right mix of adventure platforming and nail-biting shooting, just the right level of humor and heart balanced into the tight scripting and acting, just the right level of dramatic build-up to an absolutely awesome crescendo ending portion, just the right level of glossy visuals to blow your fucking cockgina off, and it's one of the most well-balanced games of this genre I think I've ever played. If you couldn't tell, I recommend that you play Uncharted 2. I've got nothing else to say. I recommend you play Uncharted 2. Okay, now, this is my favorite 2D platformer of all time, not to mention my favorite indie game of all time. Super Meat Boy is as close to perfection for a 2D game, in my personal opinion, as it comes, and the adorable yet disgusting characters and darkly hilarious slapstick comedy in the cutscenes just serves as a bonus. The gameplay on offer here is some of Legends, and the fantastic thing about it is how fucking simple it is, yet how ball-bustingly hard it is all in the same breath. By simply running and jumping while using only a few buttons, you need to manipulate everything mechanics-wise, from mid-air direction changing, wall jumping, and knowing when to sprint and slow down in order to conquer the game. And the same applies to the special power characters and even how you discover the secrets to unlock those characters. Everything here is done through the gameplay and nothing else. And even with the secrets, you'll either need to find a hidden item in an awkward location and then reach the end without dying once, or open a warp zone to an 8-bit rendition of the world with even harder levels which can only be opened by you getting to them as quick as possible before they disappear. You need to work for everything optional here, and that just makes it all the more fulfilling to play. It's a game that can immediately appeal to anybody, whether or not you need a pure adrenaline shot for a few minutes, or if you're going for the next step up and looking for some of the most difficult 2D platforming you'll ever have the misfortune of playing. And it manages to take these two levels and work them together because of the simple entry-level controls and how they juxtapose against the level designs. It's so damn fast as well and doesn't bullshit you around. You can load the game up and be playing stage 1 within under 30 seconds and then finish stage 1 in under 2 seconds, ready to tackle the increasingly harder stages. And it doesn't hide anything sinister or manipulative under its sleeves. Everything that you need to understand the design of each stage, how the game works and how it wants you to beat it is all in your face from the start. And even better, the amount of content here makes what was already an epic fast-paced story challenge even more epic. And the optional challenges and ultra super secret challenges exist to not only test your mettle but also reward you immensely for doing so by giving you new characters from other indie games, but all with their own unique abilities to do with running and jumping. And even when the challenge seems almost impossible to comprehend, the reward you get for beating it, such as this fucking part with the fucking kid from I Want to Be the Fucking Guy, is worth the sweat and bleeding gums from teeth grinding tenfold. Never before has a double jump been so worth the angry stomach pain. And the game feel, controls and physics are all beyond pleasurable. You feel every single footstep of every character you decide to play as, and I love the little touches like Meat Boy leaving his bloody trails all over the stage, so just in case you die on that stage, you can reference your old running and jumping points to beat the stage in a second run. And death itself is a mere inconvenience. You die and start immediately again from the start of the stage. No lives, no waiting, and the game oozes with this level of speed and rhythm it prides the optional content with so much to make it even more perfect on PS Vita, for example, for brief and portable bursts of excitement every so often. And please tell me about the last time you played a game about a cube of raw saggy meat fighting the evil of a menacing fetus in a jar with a tuxedo. Exactly. When you talk to me about my favourite genres, fantasy epics have never really been at the top of my list. It wasn't until I heard the buzz around Game of Thrones, watched them all until season 3 at the time, and then fucking adored it, that I then decided to step into watching The Lord of the Rings a few years later and actually show some interest in the subject matter. I don't know why. Wizards, magic, swords and shields, dragons, castles, for whatever reason it never really interested me. And despite the buzz behind Dark Souls, I never sunk my teeth into it until last year after giving Dark Souls 3 a go and loving that game. But oh man, when I did, wasn't I a fucking fool, because Dark Souls isn't just a fantasy and it isn't just an epic. It's an all-encompassing and bloody horrifying take on the genre cliches you come to expect, all wrapped around some of the most suspenseful, engaging and emotionally ripping gameplay I've ever experienced. It's so amazing to a point of me not being able to describe fully every single aspect on what makes it one of my favorite games in this video. It would require so much dissection and analysis we'd be here all day. But to keep it relatively brief, Dark Souls sees you controlling a chosen undead, who is whatever you want to be, with the immensely deep RPG elements for magic casting, heavy strength or dexterous melee-based characters. And you are a chosen undead who must attempt to ring, initially, one bell. That is your quest to start with. And you don't even question the importance of that, as you are practically rotting in a dungeon cell as you begin the game, and then are let out by one of the only friendly people in the entire story. Your quest, if anything, upholds and respects the wishes of the man who freed you. Then what started off as one bell becomes two, and what started as a favor becomes a journey to forever kill the Lord of the Realm and decide the fate of the entire world. Your character in this whole thing overall is nothing but a pawn, an exploited, manipulated and baited pawn, who in the grand scheme of things means absolutely nothing. The game likes to make you feel absolutely fucking insignificant, but it's the incredible world building, lore clues in every single inch of the stunning locations and monumentally amazing bosses and extremely lucrative NPC quest lines and how they all fit into the story that make Dark Souls. You get an intro clip, a couple of 20-second cutscenes to show something moving or a boss appearing, and an ending, and that's it. The rest of the story and how everything here begs to be fitted together is all up to you, and you can make make a start by reading every single item description of everything you pick up. It doesn't sound very interesting, but you'll be gripped. And that's already compelling enough, and everything the game presents you with is interesting and twisted enough that you do care on how it all works together, especially when you come across certain boss encounters that provide unbelievable emotional depth from no dialogue at all, and even behave slightly differently depending on if you discovered particular locations and defeated other bosses in the world. I know everyone talks about the boss characters Artorias and Sif for this comparison, and I honestly don't blame them. Not to go into too much spoiling detail, but I welled up at this boss, and the DLC that further expanded on why this seemingly docile giant wolf attacked you and what his true intentions are after what his master from the past had to endure makes it all the more upsetting. And for the truly devoted, following another character in the distance from the DLC to a secret area where you can see Sif from the past protected from the abyss by his master's shield that he couldn't carry anymore because of a broken arm. Fucking hell, with no dialogue, no explanation, that is so fucking detailed, it's depressing how some other games even pretend to have deep and interesting lore. Not that there isn't any dialogue, there are a handful of characters to interact with in the bleak and deathly world, and you feel a strange blanket of serenity whenever you meet them, even if more than half are not friendly and every single one of them ends sentences in demonic and insane laughter. It's depressing and empty, yet parades in grandness and detail, and it features many archetypal medieval things in it, but with some of the most alien and downright terrifying enemies with their behaviors and visual designs I've ever seen in any game. And every single fantastically hinted at and hidden secret you uncover, optional boss, main boss, insanely powerful gear that you upgrade through your journey never makes the game any less surprising or ingenious. Oh yes, and the gameplay is awesome, not just from how it allows you to freely discover the world and its content entirely at your own direction and pace, and it even trusts you to know which areas you are strong enough to explore at the very beginning of the game, but also from the bloodthirsty and vicious combat system that can end your game in seconds if you aren't constantly on the ball, on time with your dodging and countering, and knowledgeable with enemy weaknesses whether you go for melee, ranged, or magic builds. You need to be an effective crowd controller and know how to use the environments to your advantage, and you need to constantly monitor your stamina and not get too greedy on your offense. You need to know which enemies are even worth fighting in the first place, and if the rewards they drop are worth it. And of course you need to think about where to sink your rewards into without getting greedy again and losing all of your currency after death, forcing you to trudge through all of where you searched through again just for one last attempt to reclaim what currency you had before at the point you died at. My god, talk about non-beginner friendly, but also richly rewarding as a result. It's a game that requires you needing to give it as much as you can in order to get the most back from it, and if I can be honest, it's worth it alone just to hear what more of the bombastically brooding score has to give you. I know Demon's Souls did a lot of this stuff before it, and I do love that game also, but the level of charm, tension, horrifying designs and plot details, visual fidelity, character, and hauntingly unforgettable moments in the amazing open world are leagues above what Demons had established. And if you hear other people talk about how fucking fantastic Dark Souls is, there's a reason. Give it a go. So yesterday I talked about the majesty of Dark Souls, and now I'm on to Tomb 2 on PS1. Look, they're totally different games, alright? And it's never going to be Tomba to me. That just sounds like a lot of big poo. And maybe this entry on this list is more for guilty use of pure nostalgia over anything else, but hey, that's what this video series is, a comprehensive list of my favourite games. And I'm not ashamed to say that Tomb 2 is one of my absolute favourites, despite picking the original game out as my all-time favourite PS1 game a few years ago. Nah, times have changed, and upon revisiting this 2.5D action platform with RPG elements and tons of side quests and exploration, I leaned more towards the sequel, because I think it has a lot more imagination, item and weapon diversity, character, and visual improvements. Tomb 2 is a game about a caveman with pink hair and green leaf underpants, are you still with me? Okay. Who in the course of the game is looking for a missing friend. What ends up happening though gets hugely wound up around the revenge plot of the evil pigs from the original game, and they all need to be sniffed out in very hidden locations with items retrieved from extremely fun quests, then they need to be recaptured and the world saved along with Tomby's dear friends. So yeah, plot-wise it's not absolutely amazing, but look at the pure unbridled effort gone into the presentation here. The original 2D sprites against blocky 3D backgrounds have been replaced with an entirely 3D and ravishing collection of characters and environments. The music is a lot higher quality and with more instrumentation and longer loops with more phrases. The movement a little easier to manage and a lot less hectic. The world design a lot more cohesive and playing out like one huge giant adventure linked by particular areas instead of random places glued together on top of other random places. There are more quests that are infinitely less cryptic to figure out without being insultingly easy at the same time. There's actual voice acting for everybody you come across, which gives them way more depth and charm to combat the basic plot. I think what I'm trying to say is that this is yet another very very underappreciated sequel and PS1 game in general. It's so much damn fun to play, and there's nothing malevolent in it whatsoever. You can even complete a side quest with fucking Santa on a flying scooter. And for another example of adorable design choices, you can even shiver and freeze up in the ranch if you don't keep moving until you get the right outfit. There's so much to see, so many awesome platforming, physics and weapon mechanics to work around, so many new suits to acquire that not only help progression but also directly affect how you move and which secret hidden caves and houses you can access. And even in its darkest moments, it never fails to be jolly, light-hearted and full of obstacles and enemies that all have specific and well thought out placements so that no area felt pointless, no enemy felt cheap and no challenge superfluous. It's just one of the most unique, nostalgic, fun to checklist and complete with all the many open world side quests and overall brilliant games I've ever played, not just on PS1. And there's a reason that it's stuck with me since my childhood amongst all these other games that I've played as a young'un and kind of forgot about. I just totally love it, and it isn't even that often that PS1 visuals hold up today, but I think they do here. And I love it even more when the game isn't called fucking Tomba. Sounds like tombola. Like tombola sales. The first time I ever played BioShock, I never had experienced this level of drastic jumps in emotion while playing a game in my life. Awesome. I went from intrigue at the start, to panic after the plane crash, to fear at the sight of the lighthouse, to engrossed at Andrew Ryan's opening welcome message for new visitors, to absolute awe when the magnificent city of Rapture is surprisingly revealed to you, and then quickly back to shit your pants terrified once the curtain was fully lifted and revealed the supposed perfect city gone to absolute chaos, ruin, and left for death, except for the spine-chilling, insane yelling and nerve-wracking hiding and pouncing of all the addicted and mutilated residents. This all happens within the first 10 minutes or so. I was 15 when I first played this game, and even then, from those opening sequences and after conquering the horrors of Dr. Steinman's medical pavilion, I knew this game would be one of my favorites. And still, after replaying it multiple times and more recently on the excellent PS4 remaster, yeah, so what? The hacking minigame gets a little bit tiresome, even though I could argue that's kind of part of the point, that you have to think about other ways of getting around the hacking. For the first attempt of a game like this, and for the attempt of world building, political and social commentary, and incredible storytelling through haunting audio diaries, it's just as fucking magnificent after nearly 10 years and hasn't aged nor stayed slightly irrelevant for as fast games have progressed since it first came out. At least in my opinion anyway. Let me tell you, there is nothing quite like turning off the quest arrow in BioShock and just letting yourself loose in the exquisitely realized world of Rapture, and despite being otherworldly and ridiculous in concept, it still feels so real you can touch it. I know I've been going on a lot about atmosphere in this video series, but man, this game has one of the best. Every single thing, whether it be man or machine, is out to get you, and even some characters still relatively sane who help you on your quest can't fully be trusted, and you feel at the mercy of not only the people around you but the dilapidating city itself. You feel hunted and out of your depth, quite fucking literally, the second you step out of the first bathysphere and are tasked with saving the family of the man that is keeping you alive and helping you escape the city to get back to dry land after your plane crashed. Wrapped around that is one of the greatest and ever expanding lores and side story world buildings that has ever existed in games, so much so that you never meet most of the characters you're listening into, but fuck do they feel like they're standing next to you. And it makes exploring each nook and cranny of the hellish Art Deco city that much more rewarding, along with finding essential crafting materials, genetic upgrades, and other goodies to help your way through the extremely balanced and thought-driving purchasing system, since you are never really that rich and things are expensive. The way the meta-narrative also worms its way into the gameplay mechanics, like with the things that you buy this stuff from, where you upgrade weapons, and even use the genetic upgrades and badass elemental plasmids to become a literal god, is also extremely clever stuff, and further deepens the already deep world created in Rapture. By the ending portions of the game, you end up questioning a lot about video games and life itself, and you can't talk about any of this without mentioning the totally docile yet monstrous Big Daddies. An integral and tragic part of the plot, but even as an enemy alone, the hardest things to fight and also the most interesting to fight, encouraging clever use of traps and antagonizing and luring rather than all-out assault. The level design and many hidden secrets are marvelous for an FPS game, and like I mentioned earlier, turning off that quest arrow I would say is compulsory to get the full effect of discovery and surprise as you play through and truly appreciate the effort gone into creating a world extremely memorable and somehow reflective to our own. Like how the shopping district is built with many multi-level, big wide open corridors twisting around each other, but with many vastly different shops branching off of them. And I also loved how every area you fight to survive your way through are dominated by a particular boss or just another character. And most of your quests and what you do are at the hands of these nutcases, and ultimately completely out of control for you if you want to move on. They all just fucking own where they reside, and the highlight for me personally is with Sander Cohen in the theatre district, especially considering he's the only NPC not immediately intending to hurt you unless it's out of a spoiled and childish rage over his art. It's clear that you don't belong here, and it's clear that you mean nothing to these people, either a means to an end or something to end themselves, just because that's how the world of Rapture works, and it's so dripping in loneliness it's indescribable. Not to mention it's also deformed, gory and disturbing, but also glamorously irresistible with those graphics at the same time. And the twist, my god, the I will not say anything more, but even after like 5 or 6 replays of this game, that fucking twist with revelation after revelation still blows my mind every time I play it. It sends chills down my spine and fills me with a primal rage that any game has yet to replicate, or at least replicate so well that it has the exact same effect on me when I first experienced it. BioShock, in my humble opinion, is a first-person gaming masterpiece, and one that I cannot wholeheartedly recommend enough, and those remasters are worth the price alone just for the original game, let alone 2 other great ones alongside it. Yes, it's shocking, I know. It makes me poo my britches so much that I need to wash my clothes off with lots of washing powder, and I'm gonna shut the fuck up now because I can't do puns. You wanna know how much I love this game? I have tattoos on the backs of my hands from it. No hiding in a sleeve, not on my chest or on my back obscured by a t-shirt. It's all there, bare and naked for anyone to see how much I adore Abe's Exodus. As far as I'm concerned, at this moment in time at least, my favorite PS1 game of all time. A monumental adventure spanning 2 glorious discs and hours on top of hours of perfect, slow, methodical, difficult, and tense cinematic platforming glory, Oddworld Abe's Exodus took everything beloved in the first installment, Abe's Odyssey, and basically times it by 4. Yes, I've done the math. In this game, you follow the story of the hero of the species called Mudokons, known as Abe, a simple and slow but exceptionally brave and loyal underdog taking a stab against the corporate conglomerates that have used and abused his species for slavery, and when they're done with that, use their heads for meat lollipops and their bones used for a tasty brew, which in this game is what the focus is. Literally right after Abe's Odyssey ends triumphantly, Exodus kicks off, so poor old Abe gets absolutely no break in his constant plight of equality for his people, but after discovering that the Gluckons, these guys, have been using more Mudokon slaves to gravedigg for their own kind's bones used in the brew, and in order for them to never know what travesty they were undertaking, had their fucking eyes stitched shut. Abe is on the case yet again as you need to guide him through the bone mining factory, eventually out into the wild for more spiritual guidance and an ability to save your other friends from near fatal brew sickness, and then off into the central nervous system of the Soulstorm Brew Corporation, ready to shut down the entire operation and every other seedy, awful business surrounding it. Like Odyssey, it's a perfectly simple and darkly captivating spiritual journey with stomach-churning undertones, and it's all wrapped around gameplay that never gets old and absolutely masterful presentation. Using the hallmark mechanic of GameSpeak, you can interact with anything around you, even other enemies, in order to rescue your friends and solve tons of puzzles, and the fact that you're controlling skin on bones means that you die instantly more or less from everything you come across, even fucking slugs. So this already does wonders for creating an extremely teeth-grinding, anxious experience trying to survive among things that will shoot or eat you on sight, but the second you can find a safe enough place to possess, once Abe does possess something around him, the balance of power totally shifts, completely changes the gameplay, and gives you everything you desperately need to even the odds at that moment for a brief minute. The weight of the platforming and large emphasis on learning the timing never fails to be pleasing once you learn it, and you feel every single step Abe makes as he lumbers around, and the controls work their way into some of the best chase sequences and hide you away from some of the most lucrative yet satisfying secret areas in a game ever, and it's gratifying from the very start. Oh yeah, the game's also delightful in its looks, especially for PS1. The pre-rendered backgrounds are all copious with artistry, detail, and full of grandeur set pieces to drown you in a helpless yet otherworldly and mystical atmosphere. Look at some of these backgrounds, they're good enough to be gallery paintings, and the FMV cutscenes, tightly written satirical dialogue, and lovable, relatable characters taking a stand against the vile, detestable characters were all good enough to be compiled into a short movie and actually nominated for an Oscar and Academy Award. And unlike Odyssey, you could see and do so much more in Exodus, let alone talk to more than one Mudokon at once, and quick save to give yourself instant respawn points in case you solve a puzzle incorrectly. Enemy types are skyrocketed in numbers to create much greater challenges and situations in which every inch of the static screens need to be considered. And Abe could not only possess standard sligs with the guns, but even the wildlife for even more communication and food chain puzzles with other creatures, and even your own farts that pop around like a mini jet plane engine and explode at your will. The game speak commands are amped up to make you connect with the world in more ways and also give you more puzzles with other Mudokan emotions to consider, from depression to high off their tits. And every command at your disposal isn't just simple to input, but also has many more uses than just talking to your friends to save them, because did I mention they can work for you and get other puzzles solved from a distance for you if you're clever with it? And of course there are even multiple endings depending on how many Mudokans you saved, and the game never explicitly explains this. Oddworld doesn't treat you like a moron and gives you what you deserve based on what you thought was the right thing to do. Always the satirical and dirty mirror to our own world, always hilarious, always full of charm, and always thought-provoking. Abe's Exodus I can't believe was even a PS1 game. It's that fucking good, and Abe carries it all along with being one of the coolest characters in gaming history. It's so good that it's not fair that I could never come close to making something like it. It's not fair. It's not fair. We had twice the flavor. You'll never know my favorite game. Okay, that's a lie. I just wanted to cock tease everyone and give you a Merry Christmas message before starting off.
Because that's the time of year that it is. Or you know, if you don't celebrate Christmas, then at least happy holidays. And just have a good time with whatever you do.
Okay, enough dangling. My favorite video game of all time after 25 days of waiting is Bloodborne, my absolute, undeniable, picture-perfect, 110% favorite video game ever made, and until something brand new comes out to top it, it shall never be toppled from my personal podium of prowess. What the fuck am I talking about? Okay, remember everything I talked about with why I love Dark Souls? Well, obviously this game on PS4 is from the same company that made Dark Souls, but as a currently solo adventure, meaning the story and lore implications of the gruesome world you're stuck in feel a lot more compact and grounded. But that's the only major thing from the story approach worth saying that feels totally different from Souls, along with a few gameplay tweaks I'll discuss in a bit. In Bloodborne, once again as any character you'd like to be, you are ill and head for the city of Yharnam for a cure with the town's patented miracle blood to cure all ailments. However, you chose the best possible night to come and see the doctor, because it's the night of the hunt in the grimy city streets, and everyone from townsfolk to mutated beast alike is out for fucking blood. Forced into a savage landscape with ferocious odds stacked against you, you have no choice but to plow your way through, find out story stuff like in Dark Souls by reading every single item description for every single thing you pick up, picking out important information from every NPC, and just witnessing everything in front of you unfolding. Eventually things get way more sinister, way faster than you'd imagine, eventually opening up to reveal a multi-dimensional Lovecraftian plot that was pulling the strings the whole fucking time. And once again, my mind was blown by the storytelling alone, and how each NPC side quest had the most memorable, best voice acted and deepest missions you had to embark on that not only ever increased the depressing overtones and slowly made you realize there were no happy endings whatsoever from every single aspect, left me with holes in my heart from how well choreographed each character encounter is. And what else do I adore? Oh my god, fucking everything else. And what immediately drew me was the gory, slimy, gothic horror aesthetic, feeling like a gritty Victorian London horror movie, easily my favourite kind of horror and setting for a horror, which then decided to pull the rug from under me and revealed its interdimensional Lovecraft inspirations draped within the Victorian London look, and further made me love what I already loved. It feels exactly like Dark Souls in many aspects, and like I said, I already did a video a few days ago about it, so you can see a lot about the currency system, losing it on the field and then having one last chance to retrieve it, leveling up in specific builds, death arriving in seconds if you aren't quick and careful, the way that every item, area, character, and even interactive gameplay element like how the checkpoints work all have story significance being weaved in, and even all the optional online elements that remind you that you are never alone in your suffering and tease you with the insane lengths you need to go to in order to get help. All of that stuff still applies, and it all combines to create one heavy and oppressive atmosphere. Yes, atmosphere again, and it's the best I've ever experienced that often stooped into survival horror gameplay more than action RPG, and one that fills you with an unexplainable sense of joy and relief after crushing your foes and finding the next holy checkpoint. point, especially after a boss. But in the gameplay department, it does many other expansive things on top of Dark Souls to make it my favorite Souls-like game to play. The jaw-dropping areas feature a lot more horizontal and vertical planes of exploration to hide extremely beneficial and important items, weapons, and even boss encounters, and the game itself has no shield system, or at least one that works, so you feel a lot less safe than in Souls as you're blatantly and unforgivingly shoved into the front line in every single encounter. There's no hiding behind a shield here, and no times to stop and think what's going on. You're in the moment, every moment, and you'd better get fucking good at dodging and at visceral attacks to stumble enemies and deal massive damage. It's a million times more aggressive and fast than Souls, and luckily the controls complement this along with the awesome mechanic of your health being able to be regenerated up to a certain point if you can quickly counterattack back to whoever got you. But since this small regeneration bar is only there briefly, you have no choice but to be more courageous and be more aggressive in order to truly reward yourself and get all of your valuable and treasured health back, while balancing and not getting too cocky and losing track of your stamina and everything else and getting yourself killed. It's way more risk and rewardy, and there's so much to think about and so much going on behind the scenes in every single one-on-one encounter and when fighting against the dozens of the best and most revolting bosses I have ever played against, that it's hard to remember what you're even doing from how stressful and acutely fierce the whole game is and how it completely envelops you in the world because of all of that. I can't neglect to talk about all of the badass, steampunky and completely original hunting weaponry that transform at will. So fucking cool and all so fucking good to experiment with. And the visuals, my fucking grinding, crack smoking god, the visuals. I'm not even going to explain them. Look at this shit. Look at it. It's so beautiful, so vibrant, so disgusting, so unique, so detailed, so alluring, so abhorrent, so crisp, colossal, and spunky. The PS4 is working overtime constantly with it, and as it goes, the designs of every single beast and boss you come across leave scars in your mind from the effort and majesty crafted into all of them. And similar to Souls, but on a much more detailed scale, being able to look out into the horizon and see potential hidden areas or other locations you've just explored or will explore later as you figure out how everything links together shows off the level of care and thought gone into the world building. I mean, to be honest guys, by this point the entire Cadvent Calendar series has been difficult. There's only so many ways I can say I like this game without coming off as redundant, so maybe I'm just rambling, I don't know. But I can't feasibly describe much more on why I'm infatuated with Bloodborne. It immediately drew me in, didn't disappoint me, and exceeded my expectations to a degree that I will never ever stop loving it. And man, that DLC is some of the hardest I've ever played through in my life, but like Dark Souls DLC, worth every single half a penny and further expanding the profoundly harsh and melancholy lore to such a degree where my mind was blown in on itself yet again. This is it for me, the apex, the best game I've ever played. I want a tattoo of it somewhere, just haven't had the time for it. I have the limited collector's edition set, posters all over the place, the soundtrack on CD in the car whenever I need my kick of one of the greatest orchestral gothic scores I've ever heard in my life, and it's always a pleasure to go back and conquer the dozens of hours of in-game additional content and more bosses hiding in the completely optional and increased hours of gameplay in the Chalice dungeons, or to just help out other people online whenever I get the chance, because I want people to enjoy the game however they want to and see if they can love it as much as I did. Fucking Bloodborne, my favorite video game of all time. Thank you very much.
Christmas.